Oh, it's recording. Oh.
Caught by Thielen. 50, 40, 30, and he's loose!
What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to Skull Network. My name is Nick, and as of the night I'm recording this, the wild card games just finished up, so that means I'm going to be taking a look at the Vikings game that is now official. It is the Vikings versus the Saints. The game is set to be played on January 14th at 3:40 or 4:40 for you Eastern people, and then whatever time for the people on the West Coast. It's going to be played here in Minnesota at the US Bank Stadium, also known as the House of Pain. Now, as we know, this game did happen earlier this season. It was the very first Monday Night Football game back in Week 1, but this one's going to be a little different. The New Orleans Saints are definitely not the same team that they were back then, and neither are the Vikings. There are two main things that we know are definitely not the same with the Saints compared to Week 1. Back in Week 1, we know that their defense is not what it was now. They were kind of getting used to all their new personnel, and things were kind of just a big jumbled mess, which is why Sam Bradford was able to carve up their defense so hard, also because he was kind of a good quarterback. And then, as everybody knows, the number one thing that has changed throughout this season is the running back duo of Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara. Now that Adrian Peterson is gone and has been gone for a while, they've been obviously figuring things out, and they have become pretty decent. To the Viking side of things, there are also a few things that have changed throughout the season. Obviously, number one is the quarterback position. Week 1, Sam Bradford was the starter, and he was absolutely tearing it up, and things looked like they were going great. Obviously, now Case Keenum has taken that position by the horns and done that pretty handily, and he's been doing pretty well with it. There's also the aspect of Dalvin Cook, who's been out since Week 4 with his torn ACL. Latavius Murray and Jerick McKinnon have been better backups than I think any of us could have ever dreamt of. And the defense, it has changed a little bit, for the better, though. That defense obviously stopped Drew Brees and that Saints high-powered offense pretty easily in Week 1, but the defense has only gotten better throughout the season, and it's pretty apparent with our numbers on third down and overall defense, rush defense, pass defense, and all that. So things have changed a ton for both teams. It's going to make things insanely interesting because, as we know, the Saints are one of the most high-powered teams in the league, and the Vikings have had pretty good luck this season with shutting down high-powered teams. Now, to the untrained eye, you would look at, Week 1's numbers and be like, the Vikings have this in the bag. But, to those of us who pay attention to football and keep track of stats and, overall performance and all that, things are definitely going to be very hard to call. I'm waiting to see what all the experts are thinking as far as who's going to win. I'm not going to give you my take. I'm going to save that for my divisional week picks video that is going to be coming up here later this week, so stay tuned for that. But I think it's going to be a really hard one to call for sure. I think the biggest element in this game, or one of the biggest that's going to help determine who wins and who loses, is going to be secondary and specifically cornerback play by both teams. Because this second time around, it's going to be weird to see how each receiving core and secondary is going to respond to what happened last time. Is Xavier Rhodes going to be able to shut down Michael Thomas again and keep him from really doing any damage? We'll have to wait and see. There's a possibility, and there's a possibility he may not. And then there's the play of Marshawn Lattimore, who, as we know in Week 1, was nowhere near the lockdown, shutdown, number one corner that he is now. But obviously now that he's taken that role and taken that big step to being one of the best corners in the league, it's going to be very, very interesting to see what Pat Shurmur does with Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen to try and combat how good Marshawn Lattimore has become. So that is probably the biggest thing I will be watching for. One other thing that I think is going to come into play is going to be probably the playing of the defensive ends for each team, specifically Cameron Jordan for the Saints and Everson Griffin for the Vikings. They're both all-pro defensive ends, but both of the offensive lines of the Vikings and the Saints have been very solid this year. I think both have just gotten better over time. So I think it'll definitely be something interesting to watch for, to see how each of those players are going to affect the quarterback play of the other team, because I feel as though both Case Keenum and Drew Brees do really well under pressure. Drew Brees especially because he has all the experience and all that. But I think whoever can get more pressure and rattle the other quarterback could definitely swing the game one way or another. Would go over all the injury reports for both teams, but I think it's too early to start going over that. they still have another week to prepare. So anybody who's listed as questionable right now more than likely is going to play. People who are doubtful, obviously who knows, but I'm going to stay away from that aspect as of right now. The last thing I'm going to look at is US Bank Stadium and how that home field advantage could in turn help the Vikings. Numbers for the Vikings defense this year at US Bank Stadium are absolutely insane. The Vikings overall have allowed 15.8 points per game, which was the number one in the NFL this season. But when you go over and go to Minnesota in US Bank Stadium, the Vikings have allowed 12.9 points per game. And half of their opponents have not scored more than 10 points. So that's 4 out of the 8 that came to US Bank Stadium. And then no one has actually gotten over 20 points coming to Minnesota this year. Looking at the Saints in terms of going away, their current record from the regular season is 4-4. Now, I'm not saying that this means that one team will for sure win or one team will for sure lose. I'm just saying that these numbers are out there, they are real, and they could possibly influence the game. It's just something that we need to look for. So those are just a few things that I thought I would get out there and put the ideas in everyone's head as far as what is going to go on in the game and what really should be looked at. Like I said earlier, I'm not going to be giving my pick for this game. You guys are going to have to wait till later this week for the Divisional Round picks video. Aside from that, that is going to be the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you got something out of this. Maybe you learned something. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. And I will see every single one of you in the next one.
40, 30, and it's